So we're going to start off with a panel. We know that as we make strides forward in our advocacy work, it's super important that we connect with adult allies, both to create change and to continue the conversation across generations. So we are very excited to have this next Adult Allies panel, moderated by one of our fantastic Youth Network advisors, Clayton Murphy.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So as you heard, my name is Clayton Murphy. If you're not familiar with who I am from Halifax, and I was the network representative for Nova Scotia for 2 years. Then it became all washed up. And then, so I decided I'm just gonna stick around a little while longer, and I'm now one of the youth network advisors with my fellow fabulous advisors, so Pate. Basically what that means is Jack.org can't get rid of me, so I keep showing up to events and they keep giving me microphones, so I keep talking, so here I am. Super excited to be running this panel today. We got some really amazing panelists on the lineup here. We're going to be jumping into some really cool concepts. And yeah, are you guys ready? Cool. So I'm not going to babble too much longer. I'm going to start with some introductions. And yeah, we can give our panelists a warm welcome. Make it set up here. I got my iPad. I'm all official. All right, y'all ready? A multi-award-winning international author, renowned human rights activist, and global speaker from Newfoundland and Labrador, Gemma Hickey has made headlines worldwide as an advocate for the LGBTQ+ community and survivors of religious institutional abuse. In 2005, as president of EGAL Canada, Gemma became a well-known force for change when they co-led the movement that legalized same-sex marriage in Canada. Gemma also served as the national president of PFLAG Canada. In 2017, the request for a gender-neutral birth certificate spurred Newfoundland and Labrador to change its law, and Gemma became the first person in Canada to receive a non-binary birth certificate and gender-neutral passport. In 2012, Gemma was recognized with a Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal for their contribution to human rights in Canada. In 2016, Gemma received the Newfoundland and Labrador Human Rights Champion Award. Gemma's physical and personal journey through gender transformation is the subject of the documentary Just Be Gemma. The film first aired on CBC television and the documentary channel in 2017 and screened at various film festivals in 2018. In 2019, Gemma was a guest of the Canadian Embassy during the film's international debut in Tokyo, Japan. Gemma's highly acclaimed memoir, Almost Feral, chronicling their 938-kilometer walk across the island of Newfoundland, won the APMA Best Atlantic Published Book Award, also the Margaret and John Savage First Book Award in the nonfiction category at the Atlantic Book Awards. In 2020, CBC Books listed Gemma as one of 24 Canadian writers to be featured on the Writers to Watch list and named Almost Feral as one of 40 Canadian books on the Summer 2020 reading list. Since 2010, Gemma has worked as the executive director of ArtForce, an arts-based charity for at-risk youth. Gemma founded the Pathways Foundation Newfoundland in 2013 and co-founded ACTS Canada in 2019 for clergy trauma survivors and their families. Gemma is currently pursuing a master's in gender studies at Memorial University, and they live in St. John's. So please help me welcome Gemma to the stage. All right, welcome, Gemma.
Thank you, welcome.
How are you?
And to everyone, it's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. I actually met you at Atlantic Summit. I saw you speak there, so it's really good to see you back.
Thank you.
Before we get into the questions, I am going to introduce our other panelists and invite them up to the stage, so bear with me here. Mumalaka Kak, an Inuk woman originally from Baker Lake, Nunavut, is a leader, role model, and hero to women and girls across Canada and the world. While originally most recognized for a speech made in the House of Commons in 2017, Mumalak is now known for being the youngest elected member of parliament for Nunavut's riding. While in this position, her messaging and use of social media created ripple effects across the nation and around the world, receiving global attention from actors across the United States, Australia, and Germany. From a very young age, Mumalak was aware of the vast inequity, devastation, and turmoil that Nunavut faced, thus launching her into a life of volunteering, coaching, and advocacy work well before graduating high school in 2011. Mumalak also traveled across the country prior to ever being elected, working in positions of suicide prevention, advancing Inuit employment, and being able to develop strong speaking skills. This provided her with further opportunities to work in many positions, primarily working on the right to Inuit employment, self-determination, and opportunity. In 2021, Mumalak decided not to rerun in the federal election, again stating that federal politics was no place made for her or people like her, reminding us all that we must continue to work to make spaces more authentically reflect Canada as a whole. Through all Mumalak does, her passion continues to serve as a beacon of strength, resilience, and hope in what Canada continues to push to call reconciliation. As Indigenous peoples continue to die at alarming rates, Mumalak continues to seek out allies in the fight against the, quote, elimination of the Indian problem. And while federal institutions continue to perpetuate the stripping of her people's basic human rights, Mumalak continues in her fight for real change as she advocates for real Canadian history to be taught and for the affirmation institutions to do what is right. So please help me in welcoming Mumalak to the stage. Hello, how are you doing today?
Great to be here, Clayton. Is this on? You can hear me in the back? Great to be here.
Good, it's great to have you here. So excited to get into the panel with you today.
Who picked the music for us coming out? Who do I pin that on? Nobody wants to fess up?
We'll find that out later.
We will.
All right, so our next panelist. Kim Pate was appointed to the Senate of Canada on November 10th, 2016. First and foremost, the mother of Michael and Madison, she is also a nationally renowned advocate who has spent the last 40 years working in and around the legal and penal systems of Canada with and behalf on some of the most marginalized, victimized, criminalized, and institutionalized, particularly imprisoned youth, men, and women. Senator Pate graduated from Dalhousie Law School, with honors in the clinical law program. She was the executive director of the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies from January 1992 until her appointment to the Senate in November 2016. She has developed and taught prison law, human rights and social justice, and defending battered women on trial courses at the faculties of law at the University of Ottawa, Dalhousie University, and the University of Saskatchewan. She also occupied the Sallows Chair in Human Rights at the University of Saskatchewan College of Law in 2014 and 2015. Kim Pate is widely credited as the driving force behind the inquiry into certain events at the Prison for Women in Kingston, headed by Justice Louise Arbour. During the inquiry, she supported women as they aired their experiences and was a critical resource and witness in the inquiry itself. Senator Pate is a member of the Order of Canada, a recipient of the Governor General's Award in commemoration of the Pearsons case, as well as the Canadian Bar Association's Bertha Wilson Touchstone Award, and she has 6 honorary degrees from the Law Society of Upper Canada, University of Ottawa, Carleton University, St. Thomas University, Wilfrid Laurier University, and Nipissing University. So please help me in giving a warm welcome to Senator Kim Pate.
You're asking about the music. I wanted to go back to Dancing Queen.
I mean, we can have a dance party later. That's no problem. We can fit that in the schedule. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to get into the questions with you folks today. I think I'm not going to waste too much time babbling. I think I'm just going to jump to the questions if that's okay with you folks.
Let's do it.
Amazing. So my first question is for Gemma. So you've secured several monumental legal victories for the 2S LGBTQ+ community, specifically for non-binary folks. This work and all of the other amazing work that you do is grounded in your lived experience. Could you give us a brief description of how you channeled this personal experience into your advocacy work, and what advice would you give to young people that want to do the same?
Thank you. That's a great question, and it's certainly an honor to be here among you folks today. Our systems are constructed on this idea of dependency, and it takes away from our own agency. You know, and I learned early on that I could be the hero of my own story. And the moment I used my trauma as wings instead of chains was the moment I realized there was no limit to how high I could soar. Resilience is a skill like any other. And sometimes we need to dig deep and go inside ourselves, and other times we're able to kind of channel that energy out into the world. But It's been a hard road to get to the place where I am within myself now. But I decided, after a failed suicide attempt as a teenager, from conversion therapy, going to see a conversion therapist to change my sexuality and gender identity, that I would devote the rest of my life to ensure that young people don't have to experience the same sorts of feelings and thoughts that were going through my head. And for me, it was really important that other people needed to know, young people especially, that their lives didn't have to be summed up by another statistic, that we could beat the odds as well as the statistics. And I'm one of the lucky ones, I realize that, but I feel a strong sense of social responsibility. And for me, that means channeling that into the world, creating space, safe space for marginalized folks. When I applied for a non-binary birth certificate, there was no space for people like me. I literally had to go and create that space. I took my pen, there was only male and female there, and I marked in another box and put beside it non-binary and checked that off. Then I took my government to court. And then I ran for my government eventually. So it's interesting to play that, to walk that thin road. We talked about that earlier, but it can be done. You just have to think creatively. You know, when I was a kid, I used to read these stories and I could be the hero back then. And then I realized imagination. I could be anywhere. I could do anything I wanted. And once you change your perspective, your attitude, it means everything. And that's how I know I could be the hero of my own story, and how you folks can be the hero of your stories as well. And you can bring that into your activism and your advocacy work. You have to find what's personal to you, what matters to you, and go from there.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I'm like growing up, yeah, I have goosebumps exactly. Growing up, I, as like someone in rural Nova Scotia who identifies as like a queer person, like you don't have a lot of representation. You don't have a lot of role models that are like you that you can look up to. So just hearing your story and seeing the inspiration that you provide for queer folks all over Canada and the world is truly, truly inspiring. And I love what you said about resiliency, because there's this concept in advocacy of being your own hero and creating your own narrative, but resiliency is a really big part of that. And I think it's something people have to consider when you're getting into this kind of fields. If you want to carve out those paths, you have to take care of yourself as well. So you can be the hero that you always wanted to be, but make sure you're taking care of yourself as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to move over to Mumalak now. A lot of the work that you do, from your involvement in Daughters of the Vote, your social media activism through Tuhanga Hear Me, and your past work in Parliament, brings marginalized voices to the forefront. I'm wondering if you can speak of how you first got involved in activism, and if you could give one piece of advice to the other youth who are working in spaces where their voices may not be heard and respected in the same way that adult voices are.
Thank you for that question for a number of reasons. First of all, I am still youth. I am still you, as much as you are me. I'm only 28 years old. I got elected when I was 25. Each and every one of you could be sitting in the seat that I was sitting in. All I did was take opportunity. My experience comes from I think, as Gemma had touched on, we're born into it. We don't choose it. It's not a choice we make to be who we are. We have to advocate for it, though. I didn't choose advocacy or activism. It chose me. As soon as I was born, there were things that worked in the world differently for me, for Gemma, for Kate. It all works differently for all of us. It works differently for each and every one of us sitting here in this room. All I've done is take opportunity to the best of my ability and shout at the top of my lungs what we need, because we're dying without basic human rights. Inuit are choosing to kill themselves because they don't have a roof over their head, because they can't keep themselves clean. There's no consistent drinkable water, because we can't afford to feed ourselves and our families. We have to pick between rent and food in our homelands, on our home grounds. And it's like that for many, many of us Indigenous peoples here in this country. It's been like that for hundreds of years. After thousands of years of us taking care of this space and this land and ourselves and everything in it, it's all about narrative and space and time. It's all about what you decide to do with that too. Because all I decided to do was use my voice to take up space. Duhang Nak directly translates to hear me. And I spell it out so clearly. I put it in my own language and then in a language you understand too. And I repeat it all the time. Advocacy and activism, you're lucky if it's a choice. The next person you're going to hear talking, I think, was a choice. And I should not speak on behalf, but people like us, we have to enter those spaces. Because if we don't, who else will? And it's not always people don't always have good intentions or goodwill or we're all looking out for ourselves. Human beings are incredibly selfish all the time. We're all sitting here for ourselves. You're all sitting here to learn something about yourself and grab from this experience in the way that you can. That's normal, that's natural, that's fine. That's how human beings are. The more that we don't realize that, and the more that we decide to separate ourselves, that's where it becomes a problem. That's where I'm sitting on a stage and I'm recognized for Inuit, blah, 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 about basic human, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm just trying to say we all deserve an equal opportunity, and the people that do the best with it, grab it and scream at the top of their lungs what they're doing with it. That's all I've been doing. I'm not no human rights activist. I'm not no advocate for no. I'm just trying to be a human being and make sure I'm safe in every space. And everybody else deserves to be safe in every space. How do we ensure that happens? How do we make sure that happens? Understanding that we're all human beings. There's all a connection. There's all a purpose. And it's fine to have discussions about it. As long as we're clear and as long as we're communicating as clearly as we can to one another. It's not about advocacy or activism. It's about being human. It's about connection. It's about discussion. It's about this expanding beyond this. Because you didn't just come here to learn for you. You got to take this now and teach everybody that you can. I can feel myself going down rabbit holes. Y'all seen Alice in Wonderland? That's how I feel a lot of the time. Like I jumped into the rabbit hole and now I don't know how to stop talking. There it goes. So thank you very much for that question. But realize what you got too. Let people hear you. Duhang Nak, hear me. Because I will sit there at the same table and I will hear you just as much. And that's all I'm asking of everyone. Matna, thank you for that question.
I am obsessed with you. I love what you said about taking an opportunity, because a lot of, I know at least in my experience in advocacy, that's kind of how it started. Like you feel like you're born into it and you see this opportunity to start making change and you jump on it. And then, like you said, it kind of brings you down the rabbit hole. And I think it's really important for everyone in the room to realize this is going to look different for everyone. You know, maybe you did choose to come here to the summit. Maybe you felt like you were compelled to come to the summit. But the central element there, as Mumalak said, is we're all learning to use our voices here. We're all individual change makers coming into this room together. So realize the potential that you have and bring that back to your communities and start making change, if not for you, for those who don't have a voice in your community. All right, so moving down the line here, Senator Pate, it's my understanding that through your career, you have both worked in legal and political systems as well as taught people about these topics at several Canadian universities. I know a lot of our delegates here today and myself are studying for things that are closely related to our advocacy goals and our activism interests. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about your academic journey and how you took what you learned in school and used it to shape your political and activism work?
Well, thank you very much. And please, everybody call me Kim. If ever it looks like I like the paycheck or the platform too much, you're all part of the group that I encourage to hold me accountable. So it's a privilege and a responsibility to be here that I take very seriously. And I don't usually talk about this stuff, but it seems like it's absolutely my advocacy, especially in the last 20, 30 years, has been a choice. And I think that's really important. I grew up in a time, though, that I didn't identify many of the issues that you know all too well, and you are leading. Gemma's leading, Mumalak's leading, you're all leading. I was a girl who loved girls, but couldn't even express that. Even now, many people don't know my partner is a woman. That comes from layers and depths of internalized homophobia that are really, and the fact that I was raised as a service brat. My dad was in the military, and I watched people who came out either as part of the military or as children, and their families would be punished. I saw, and my dad neither of my parents had an education. I'm the first to get a university education, as my mom said, my dear mom, who is now passed. And actually, Dancing Queen was her favorite song, so you brought me right there. You know, she used to always say, "Are you ever going to use those degrees?" Well, the education is really, really important. So if anybody is interested, and you're welcome to check it out. I think it's publicly available, but I got a BA in a teaching degree at UVic, and then I went to Dalhousie Law School. And then because of the number of people with significant mental health issues, largely because of past trauma, who are in the prison system, I went and did postgraduate work and a master's in forensic mental health. So did I use those? Absolutely. But what was, to me, and still is integral, is the connection with people. When both of you have said, and well, all of you, and I've talked to a few people here, if you are not able to do advocacy in a way that expresses the love, the care, the humility, the honesty, the wisdom that you gain from your own experience, then it's what I call performative activism. It's not just my term, and as opposed to really transformative activism. So what does that mean to me? Well, I'll just tell you what it means to me. I'm very interested to have the conversation with all of you too. So where did I learn best the work that I have tried to help mentor with others? Well, one, nobody does anything alone. The fact that I'm here and then I get credited with things it's never the work of one person. It's always the work of collectivities. And I have had the privilege and responsibility of working with incredible anti-racism activists, anti-poverty activists, Indigenous leaders, and folks throughout the country and around the world who have done incredible work. And sometimes you get to be the mouthpiece. But if you get a position like this, like the public servant position I'm in now, you have a responsibility to do everything you can with it. And that's very much how I see it, that these are collaborative, cooperative approaches, and a responsibility to bring people forward. When I was told that I was the first person to hire someone on the Hill who had a record, I was shocked. And then I thought, why should I be shocked? And so the fact that we don't often walk the talks that we know and that we live, including me. I walk, I have passed in a whole bunch of ways for a whole long time. And that has allowed me then to provide supports to other people. So you didn't ask it exactly this way, but many people say, why did you want to go to law school? Many people think I had a social activism idea beforehand. No, I was rooted in, the class reality that was my family situation. I grew up much of the time in 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom places where I shared 1 bedroom with my 3 sisters. Nothing compared to the housing horrific situation I've seen in your communities and in many other communities. But it gave me a sensitivity that when I said I wanted to go to law school, it was because I wanted to make money. I was, I had been raised in this capitalist idea that if we could figure out a way to make money, that I could somehow save my family from many things. And, suicide, homelessness, major significant mental health issues are rife, like in so many. I mean, there's probably nobody in this room who you haven't experienced it. And so part of it is sharing the ideas you have, being less uncomfortable about that. And that's what I've heard from just in the short time I've been here this morning and what I've read about the organization. So I'm incredibly excited to be here. I'm incredibly excited that you all exist and that you are peer supporting, mentoring, leading in all kinds of ways that will actually change the world, because the decisions that are being made in Ottawa, the policy decisions, are just that. We could decide that we will leave no one behind. We have not decided that yet. And it's not your job, it's partly my job, but all together we can push to make sure that happens. Part of what attracted me when it was actually a group of Indigenous women who approached me first about nominating for the Senate. And I said, they'll never put me there. I've been, nipping at their heels and, crying into the wind for so long about so many issues. They'll never, and so nobody was more shocked than me. But I take it very seriously that now that this is an opportunity I have to do everything I can to try and shift this needle. So some of you know guaranteed livable income, free post-secondary education, healthcare, housing, clean water are all things we could achieve in this country. And I often remind people, when Alberta so-called discovered oil, it was about the same time as Finland so-called discovered oil. What they did was so vastly different. Same geographic, roughly area, same rough population. Finland decided it would become a national resource. And yes, while there's exploitation and we can go about that, what they did though was every resource, instead of the capitalist ideology that permeated in this country, they invested it in people. And so when the pandemic hit, every person alive in Finland could be supported from then until they died. And even the most remote fjord had clean water, healthcare, education, housing. Those are the sorts of things we should be insisting in Canada. That's not true in Alberta, even though the oil was there. And so we need to insist. These are policy decisions. And as a dear mentor and friend to me, Cindy Blackstock, said in November to a bunch of judges, how is it that we can get clean water and the internet and everything else that people need on the space station, but can't get it in Indigenous communities in this country?
That was a mic drop moment. Holy. Thank you so much for sharing your journey through academia and how it's kind of brought you to where you are now. There's a couple similarities I was picking up on kind of where I'm at in my academic journey right now. As you said, we go in with this capitalistic idea of we need to get this degree so we can make a lot of money. And I'm sure a lot of people in this audience can relate to the next thing I'm going to say. It's not just a learning experience at university or college or wherever post-secondary you're going to, if you have the opportunity to do so. It's an unlearning experience as well. We start learning about different cultures, different peoples, different ways of life. And I think that is a really important transformative part of higher education as well that helps us kind of cement ourselves into these systems. So encourage everyone to take everything that you learn, your experiences here, your experience in education, and really leverage that and try and create impact in new communities, because that experience of meeting others and expanding your network and learning and unlearning is really going to be a really essential factor in creating change, as Kim has. So yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to the second round of questions now, and I'm going to go back to Mumalak. In your work advocating for systems level change, how do you balance advocating for the various voices coming from your community while also advocating for yourself, your safety, and your well-being?
I hope everybody can see how much I'm sweating up here. Kim had actually reached out to me shortly after I was elected to my office and sent an email. So I'm learning things about her I've never heard before, the same as you all. But I think, coming into this space even, just had a little discussion. What's our goal? What are we trying to do here? How much time do we want to take from each other to be able to speak or not? Gemma understood right away, I'm this person, this position. I don't want to take up too much time. Let the lady speak. Which is great. And I've learned things from Kim that I never knew about before either, which helped me understand a lot of our interactions and a lot of things. We can see the questions up here too, so I'm just going to go back. While also advocating for yourself, your safety, and your well-being. I failed. I really failed myself. That whole time I was in politics, I was crazy. And I share about Kim sharing new things that I'm just gonna learn. I'm about to share things that she's just gonna learn for the first time too. I really failed myself. I failed on so many levels for myself. If an election didn't happen, I had to figure out how I was going to step away from politics in a graceful way to let the next person come in. I lost 80 pounds. I lost a love for food. You can't see happiness in my eyes. I'm really trying to work on that. I'm trying to make amends with people that I thought I would never speak to again. I'm trying to understand what the world is about and why we all feel this empty space or this longing to fulfill a space. Even though we are already space, we should feel enough. We should be enough. We should be able to breathe and communicate and just not at the end of the day feel like something's missing, something is itching, something. I didn't ask to be put in advocacy or activism or da-da-da-da. I also wasn't taught balance. I was not taught how to take care of myself. I was not taught how to find balance and be okay at the end of the day. At the end of the day, too, I realized that all the systems that have been built in this country were built against me to ensure that I feel like I don't belong and I'm not supposed to be here. That's a 200-year message in the making. You can see it from the first prime minister to the current prime minister. You will see it in the next prime ministers too. It's a smarter narrative. It's being able to read between the lines. And I knew I was failing myself in all of that. I was not taking care of myself. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. I refuse to have a scale in my home because typically I'm about 180 pounds. This morning I weighed myself at the Airbnb I'm staying at. I'm like 124. I can barely look in the mirror. I never saw chest bones before. I thought that putting tattoos on my face, my first thought was, how am I going to find a husband? And I realized that 5, 6 years later, that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is if I'm safe every time I step into an Uber car. Am I safe every time I leave my home? I don't go into a city after dark without telling somebody where I am. Exactly where I am, all the time. And it took me until even a few weeks ago to realize that this is a reality not just of mine, but so many other people, for so many different reasons, on so many different levels. Whether you're brown, white, black, male, female, non-binary, however you decide to present yourself in the world can be dangerous for you and only you. I failed to see the need for my own well-being to take care of. And in that, I failed everyone and everything else that I stood for. If we're not going to take space and opportunity for ourselves, we're already failing. It's more than fine that you're here for your own reason. That's not my point. My point is that all this matters. Every single thing in it. If you don't advocate for your own self and your safety and your well-being and your understanding of how your world works, we're already failing. We're already not where we're supposed to be. We should at least be able to sit in one room and have honest conversations to just talk about being. Being human is hard. This is gross. This is, who wants to think about this? But we all do. At the end of the day, there's a little scratch, a little something not sitting right. And that's not on any of us. We can talk about choices, we can talk about being put into it in our lives. It doesn't matter. That's fine, as long as we have the honest conversation of how we got here. I failed myself, but I refuse to fail anybody else anymore. The least I can do is talk about it truthfully. That's the least I can do. How do I advocate for myself, my safety, my well-being? Telling other people that I'm not good. Because we need other people to be. And that's fine. That's more than fine. Kim had introduced herself to me in the beginning of politics. The best thing I could have done is held on to that. And we could have screamed about the same things together. Instead, what I did was I failed myself in my well-being. I didn't reach out to those connections. I didn't go and find those safe spaces. I really, really failed myself. And at the end of the day, that's the only person you fail when you don't take care of you. And it starts crumbling down all these other spaces as well. When you are looking for systems to change, it takes people like me to help that crumble. It takes people like Gemma to pick it back up and rewrite what it even means in their own way. It takes understanding of years coming from a certain perspective and realizing, oh, maybe life doesn't work exactly like this. Maybe there's a bigger picture to it. That's all fine, but you need everyone here. We need Gemma, we need Mumilak, and we need Kim. We need each and every one of you sitting on all these tables. We need to ensure we have spaces for people like Clayton to be able to share their talent. We need people like you to take up your space and your voice and your opportunity. It's just about opportunity. You feel me going down a rabbit hole again? That's usually where I cut myself off. I think I got my point across.
I just want to say thank you for your honesty about failing yourself. I feel like that's a narrative we don't see as much in advocacy spheres is it happens. There, like you said, there are broken systems. There are systems that work against us. It can tear us down. It can beat us down. And it can feel like a failure on our part. But it's important to realize that you can build yourself back up again. I always like to think of it as like a battery. Find out what is depleting your battery. Find out what's taking your energy away. And remove yourself from those things. Because in order to create impact and be a hero for other people, you have to be a hero for yourself. So charge yourself back up, get back out there. It's okay to fall down, it's okay to stumble, because at the end of the day, there'll be find your network, there'll be someone to help you up and help you continue to create impact in your communities. So we're talking a little bit about the systems that work against us and some of those broken systems. So I'm gonna throw this next question over to Kim. How can youth participate and influence changes in our political landscape beyond just voting? So perhaps you could speak to avenues that exist for youth to participate in like the legislative process to ensure that our voices are heard by decision makers.
First, First, I want to pick up and thank you for sharing. I was in Iqaluit when you were elected, and it was the most jubilant. I was in a law class speaking, and there was celebration. And part of what I am going to get to the question, so I apologize, Clayton. It sounds like I'm not. But, you know, part of it is learning from the challenges you've dealt with. And so what I've just learned now that is really important for me is when I reached out, I didn't keep reaching out because I wasn't sure if it would be, you know, wanted, was welcomed. And every time I second guess myself, I'm usually right, that I should have kept reaching out. And so we learn from our mistakes. Virtually everything that I have learned, I have first done something that has gone colossally wrong and then tried to learn. And so when you say, what can youth do? My response is, you tell me, what can we do to make those avenues open up for you? Because that's part of what is our responsibility. So for instance, when I went to the Senate, I was teaching, you heard, I was teaching at Dalhousie and at U of O at the Ottawa Law School. And the student said, well, this isn't it. You're not stopping teaching, right? And I said, well, I can't really, like I have to prioritize. I've just agreed to prioritize. They said, well, figure out another way. And I thought, okay, of course. So they developed a whole level of internships. So every summer, law students come from Dalhousie. And during the year, throughout the year, law students come from Ottawa U. And now it's expanded. We've had students, with the pandemic, we've had students from all across the country be able to join because I'm a techno-twit. So, you know, those of you who know I do social media, it's not, aside from retweeting and a few tweets, it's my daughter and her partner, Maggie, who do the TikToks, and I pay them out of my own pocket because, of course, it would be a conflict of interest, blah, 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 blah. So we figure it all out. But it's young people, youth leading. I say young people because everybody's younger than me. And so it's youth leading that keep opening up new ideas about how we make it accessible. So I'm not trying to dodge the question. I think I try and talk to young people and say, you know, how can we open this up? So when they came and said, you've got to get on TikTok, and I'm not singing and dancing, like, you know, dancing queen, sure, but no, I'm not singing and dancing. It has to be substantive. And their response, it's always, in my experience, the strongest are when it's in what we often describe, and Jack.org does, an iterative process. I come with skills and ideas and position and responsibilities and privileges. You come with your ideas, your creativity, your collaboration, your collectivities, your ideas, and we work together to make it even a better idea. And that's really what we've been trying to do, is keep building. So one of the interns said, you've got to do a podcast. I'm going, oh, how do I do that? So we have a podcast. And others, you know, I mentioned about TikToks, and others said, you've got to be better on Twitter and Instagram. I said, I have no idea what that means, but okay. And so those are just, in some ways, I don't mean to sound in any way like I'm being simplistic, but it is every time someone comes with a new idea. One of the young women who's joining us from, and I can't even remember which faculty it is now, but it's one of the New Brunswick universities, developed her whole internship, and it's all going to be about recreating some new ways of thinking about working with people in prison. Great idea. I didn't come up with that. She came up with that, and we just helped provide the platform. So that's a long way to say, if you have ideas about how you want to be involved, get in touch with those of us who are interested in hearing those ideas, and and work together to try and move it forward, because that's where I've learned. That's how some of the speeches that we do, everything, we send it out to folks. I send it out to young people, academics, professionals in the area, and say, what am I missing? What do I need to get better at this? And so I think there's lots of avenues. If you're trying to get in touch with an individual member of parliament or senator, well, I shouldn't say member, you can correct me, but senator for sure, call their office. It's amazing to me how few people just pick up the phone anymore. Now, I'm old, okay, so I'm more used to picking up the phone than texting. But pick up the phone and basically ask. Yeah, tonight, tomorrow, again, I'm going to be meeting with some young people I've known since they were babies, who are now developing their own companies, their own activist strategies. And I learn so much more every time, and together we become stronger, and we actually will make that world that we want to see happening, not just, and setting our vision broader. I always say to folks, the people who inspire me most are the people who have come through incredible adversity and don't give up. And I don't mean that people who give up don't inspire me, they do. I can't imagine how people survive half the time, some of the realities they live. And so it's really working with them to say, how do we make this kind of reality for more people than you and the people close to you? And so I think those are some, just a few ideas, but really I'm looking forward to hearing from you what your ideas are. Thank you, Clayton.
I like what you said about us having like the ideas and the creativity to bring to people like yourself. It's really important to realize you're all in this room for a reason. You are the change makers in your communities. You're on the ground. You know what's best. Just as Mumalak said, you just have to take the opportunity. Reach out and know that there are allies like Kim in your communities, and change can happen. So I'm going to move on to Gemma now. So much of the work that you do is grounded in community and peer support, much like the community support resources through your Pathways Foundation. What advice would you give to young people trying to foster a sense of community in their work? Why is that so important?
The questions are so great, and I'm just taking in what I'm hearing here today, just processing. It's lonely to be an activist. It's really lonely. It's lonely to say, hey, everybody, this is where we need to go. And then for you to go there first. It's tough, but it's necessary work. I look at myself as a builder, not so much of physical buildings, but of people and communities, of the house of my body. Every day, I rebuild myself. Every day, I try to contribute to my community using the tools, not a hammer or a nail, but tools. Tools that my mother gifted to me, my grandmother gifted to me, people who inspire me gifted to me in order to rebuild. And sometimes in order to rebuild, to build things back up again, we need to really look at the harsh reality that is. For example, back home, there's discussion over church buildings being sold to pay off survivors, because of what happened. And Newfoundland and Labrador has experienced clergy abuse like all over the world, but Newfoundland and Labrador is ground zero when it comes to clergy abuse, and people are very protective over their churches. But just the other day, I had to point out, God doesn't live there anymore. These are crime scenes. That doesn't mean that we can't preserve our heritage or remember our history or somehow preserve the outside structure of the churches. But if we're going to preserve history, we need to preserve all histories. And so I think whatever place you're at in your life, you need to determine whether it's safe for you to speak out, whether you have support. Do you have support of your family? Do you have support of your friends? Are you in a space to be able to do that right now where you're at, in yourself? You know, I talked about being the hero of your own story earlier. Sometimes for me, that means getting up, making my bed, and that sets the tone for my day. You know, and I practice a lot of self-care. I talk to a therapist regularly, and that's really hard work, but it's important work in order to be able to do what you need to do. And again, you know, I look at some of the things that have happened to me in my life and the losses that I've endured, and I think some of my losses have been my biggest wins. Some of them have brought me to places today where I can share the stage with these incredible people. And I think, again, it's perspective and what can you learn from these experiences? What do they teach you? And what can you give to others? You know, it's very, very difficult, but at the same time rewarding to constantly share your story. But it's important to be honest and genuine because people respond to that. I think the best advice I can give is, in order to be a leader, you need to learn how to be a follower. Because you are not the only authority. You can't let your ego get in the way. You know, I'd follow you anywhere. I'd follow you anywhere. I'd follow you anywhere. Because I'm eager to learn and listen and be an ally. And so, you know, I thought that when I transitioned, I identify as non-binary, but I present very masculine. And, you know, I volunteered on women's boards prior to my transition. I'm a feminist. I've been sexually abused by a priest as a woman, as a girl. But I never realized how much sexism actually existed until I started to look like a man. And I thought that things would get easier over here. I thought that because I have male privilege, I wouldn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. But I still have to look over my shoulder. I've gotten death threats. I've been spit on. My property's been damaged. So you need to really think about where you're at in your life. If you're in a place where you can commit to advocacy work. And again, just set goals for yourself. Short-term goals, long-term goals. But be true to yourself. Build yourself back up because we don't affirm one another enough in society. We don't. It's so critical and negative. And again, so when I look at myself in the mirror now, I use all of those tools to help build myself back up again every single day in order to be able to do the work that I do. And so that's my message to you. I also like cold water swimming all year round. I find that that's really helpful. Like swimming in fresh water kind of gets the endorphins going. You know, find out what it is you love to do to take care of yourself. And, you know, just take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of everyone else. Thank you.
I love what you said about needing to take care of yourself in order to take care of others. It's something that we've kind of talked about a few times today. And I also love that you describe yourself as a builder. I think it's really important for the delegates in the audience to realize today, you all have a unique set of skills. Maybe some of you are builders, maybe some of you are storytellers, maybe some of you are healers. Run with that and be confident in your own abilities, because that's going to resonate with people and that's going to help people, and it's going to allow you to connect with other people in your network, and you're going to learn so much more from other people with different titles. Maybe you're a healer and you meet a builder, and you're going to create such a wave of change together. But in order to do that, you have to be confident in yourself and you have to make sure that you're ready. So please take care of yourselves. So I think we're going to throw it over to the audience for a Q&A. Hop in, delegates. This is your time to start thinking about what you want to ask our panelists. throw it up on Hopin. I will be looking for it. And now I'm going to throw it over to our in-person audience if anyone has any questions. One over here.
Hi there. This is a question for Gemma.
Hey, what's your
I'm
name?
Vin.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I just want to say I'm also from Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm
Hey,
from Corner Brook.
best place.
I like to think so, anyways. I'm a trans person as well from Newfoundland, and I just before I ask a question, just want to let you know that you are a guiding light in everything that I do and a lot of my peers in terms of our activism, and so I really can't thank you enough for that. But what I was going to ask is kind of a question that I've been trying to find the answer for a long time, I think. As a trans person, I think a lot of the activism that I try to do, and a lot of the activism that I see a lot of people in my community do, is informed by our trauma and the hard things that we've been through. I wanted to, if you're okay and comfortable with it, know your perspective on how do we find the joy in activism aside from all the trauma.
I just got chills, and I'm so humbled by your feedback. And I hope that every day of my life I'm worthy of how you just described me, and I will try my best, my very best. Thank you. The joy is in moments like this. You know? I mean, I really feel uncomfortable listening to my bio and listening to like these things. I get a friend to write my bio who's a fellow writer. I just feel weird about writing about myself, even though I just wrote a memoir. It sounds funny, but anyway, because I'm so publicly visible and I'm so open, people often approach me at the supermarket or on the street and say, "Thanks for speaking out," or "You should, you've really helped my kid," or these types of things. Some of what you described, your experience, and I look at my accomplishments and I think, okay, that's great. But honestly, this is how I measure success. This is how I measure my accomplishments. I can't put this on a wall and frame it, but I certainly feel like, based on what you've said to me today, that I have done my part. I have made some kind of a difference, and that takes away from my pain. So this type of advocacy work that I do is very healing for me, because sometimes I don't know what to do with my pain. But if I can use it to help other people, then I must. I feel I must. It doesn't make me better than anyone else. That's just my way of how I need to move forward with my healing journey. And so when we make connections like this, like you and I are BFFs now, that's joy. Every single day on this earth is joy, because you made it another day. You've outlived homophobia. You've outlived transphobia. You're here another day. Whether you make a change within yourself or within other people, you're still here. You're still breathing. And I thank you for that. And that's joy. Your joy. This connection is joy. And just sharing our lived experiences and embracing one another in that circle of love. Queer people often get to pick our family. You're in my family. So that to me is how I experience joy, even though it's difficult to constantly relive that trauma. So you just took care of me today. So thank you.
Got me tearing up here. All right, so I'm going to hop over to our hop-in delegates. I see a question up on the screen here. So from Angelica, do you have any tips for youth advocates when going to political figures in their communities, specifically when you have opposing political views from the majority government? for anyone who wants to answer.
Can you give me the question again?
For sure. Do you have any tips for youth advocates when going to political figures in their communities, specifically when you have opposing political views from the majority government?
Just call them. Just like Kim said, just call them. They pick up. They know how to work a phone, usually. And I don't mean text. I mean, you got to call. You got to dial a number. But once you start doing that, they start having to respond. You can't just let a phone ring. It's your job to pick it up as a politician. I love throwing people off all the time. I used to answer my own office phone. Hello, Mommy Knock speaking. Who? Huh? I'm talking to the MP, right? Yeah, this is she. Oh, it's security downstairs. Okay, bye. But I'd always pick up my own phone to just throw people off because people don't expect the politician to actually answer. But all you got to do is call, ask the person's name, write down the time you called, and say, I would like to hear back from your boss, however you want to word it however way you need it. They understand what you're talking about. And eventually they'll have to call back. The trick is if you stop calling, they don't have to respond. All you got to do is pick up the phone in different ways. The way that I did it in my time as MP was creating enough online traction to get enough people pissed off to show up at the door. So I skipped all the calling steps and I tried going all the way to the front door. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on who you are, depends on how you look, depends on your experience. But if you don't start by just picking up the phone, nothing happens. That's it. As soon as you start making those calls, and I mean dialing number calls, I don't mean text, I don't mean email, voice-to-voice conversations go way further than anything else. You can start pinning people for the things that they say. That's where you get your stuff to be able to post online. All my traction and things that I tried to skip were because I already had things in my back pocket. I already had a conversation where somebody said something that didn't lead to something or did lead to something. So I already had that information to give to the public. Hey, General David Lametti isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing. You don't just turn around and start having those conversations to air, to public. I already had things in my back pocket because I already had interactions with him, whether it was over the phone or email, or I would find out people's names, talk to their voice, talk to their face. That's all. The more you start doing that, the more people can't hide behind things. The more people can hide behind things, the more we can create whatever narrative or whatever communication that we want to in whatever way that we want to. Then things don't start to matter. Being able to communicate a face, a time, a place, that's all really powerful stuff. Who's where, who's doing what, or who's not where and who's not doing what. Both matter. All you got to do is pick up the phone and start making those conversations yourself. Talking about taking care of ourselves, it's all about opportunity and using our voice. That's it. Your opportunity to use your voice. There a question from the audience? Everybody's hand should be going like this, right? They should all pop up. All of you. Use this. Use this. Whether it's to pick up the phone, do however you got to do too. If you start with text, if you start with emails, that's great. It's a start. It's a conversation. As soon as you have opportunity to use this and this, use it ASAP. Ain't nobody gonna wait for you to pick up the phone. Nobody gonna wait for you to ask a question. You think we're gonna sit up here like, how long before the audience get comfortable to be able to ask us real stuff? We'll be sitting here all day. The magic isn't just in being able to speak to you. It's a communication. It's what we just saw. But if you don't pick up that opportunity yourself, it ceases to exist. There is no opportunity. All I've done is taken my opportunities to say crazy things. I told the organizer that brought us up, it's like, I don't know how full on I want to go today. And he's like, let loose. That's what you're here for. To be raw, to be you. That's what we're all here for. Opportunity. Using it is all you got to do. I love too how when I went, any questions, I saw a couple hands pop. So I don't know what time we're kind of running into at this point.
Yeah, I think
But
we are.
I think we're a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're at the end of our time for
Yeah.
today, unfortunately, but I just want to say a huge thank you for all of your amazing, eloquent answers today.